Hey shoe people, it's Wisconsin Shoe Guy here, and today we're going to actually have a shoe battle between two shoes that I think a lot of you have been looking for. This is the Alfred Sargent Moore and the Crockett and Jones Westbourne. So here we go. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is Wisconsin Shoe Guy, and our channel we talk about men's dress wear. It's all about footwear, and we talk about unboxing videos, general shoe knowledge, helping you understand the industry and what's happening with your shoes. We look at shoes critically to determine whether or not they're worth the price that they charge. We compare shoe to shoe to understand which one is the best of the same category, and then I interview experts in the field to get their take as well. Check out my playlists to see all my videos. Hey, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about two very cool shoes. We have the Crockett and Jones Westbourne. Okay, it's an Adelaide, and it fulfills the pretty much the basic definition of an Adelaide across the board, soup to nuts. Okay, and then we're going to look at a very comparable shoe to it, which is the Alfred Sargent Moore, also an Adelaide, also fulfills the definition of an Adelaide, soup to nuts. Now, this is part of the Alfred Sargent exclusive line versus the Crockett and Jones mainline. Okay? Now, they both have hand grade lines. Generally speaking, what I hear in the market from other shoe collectors is that the Alfred Sargent hand grade line far exceeds the Crockett and Jones hand grade line. But what about the mainline? Okay? And Crockett and Jones has just a main line. Alfred Sargent has the exclusive line and then also has a country line. So this is the exclusive line. So let's talk about how the shoes are similar, how they're different, and then we can get into some quantitative measurements as well, where I have my handy dandy tape and we can actually measure some things to put some numbers around it. So first, let's talk about the lasts themselves, okay, and how they're different. If you look at the Alfred Sargent, it is a little bit on the shorter side. They are slightly different sizes. This is 9.5 and this is a 10, but that is a big difference in length for that. So the Crockett and Jones is longer just by its definition, okay, or just by the design. Okay, so it's got an elongated shape to it. It has a little bit longer of a toe cap as part of that as well. The throat itself looks to be a little bit longer, or it looks to be about the same size. So when I say throat, what do I mean? I mean the actual U throat here. Okay. When you look at shoes and you're trying to compare shoe to shoe, a lot of times what you're doing is you're looking at measurements in the way the shoe is set up. The last itself, especially on mass-produced shoes like these, is going to be the same for a couple different sizes. Or the piece of leather that they put over the last is going to be the same for several different sizes. So the proportions may change, but the proportion for something like this will be the same, but the toe, and then the proportion from here to the toe will be the same, but then the actual size of the cap will vary. The size of the back will usually be pretty close to the same as well, because that's the way they go over the last. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. So, but as we're looking at this, right, the question is how do these compare to each other? So the U throats are about the same. When you look at the length of the heel counters are pretty close in length. What's different though is that the heels themselves are much shorter on the Alfred Sargent, and I think that's interesting, almost a whole centimeter. So that's an interesting tidbit there. When you look at the waist of the shoes, the waists there's a little bit of a narrower waist on the Alfred Sargent. We can measure that, but it's curved a little bit more than the Crockett and Jones is. So you see right here, it is curved. Now you'll notice there's also a big difference here in that the Crockett and Jones has an open channel sole and the Alfred Sargent has a blind stitch sole. So they actually took a little bit of extra time and hid the stitching from view. Now, as the shoe gets older, we'll wear that down and see that change there. Now, from a nail perspective on the heel, this has 4 nails on the Alfred Sargent. The Crockett and Jones has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 nails on this. Now, that's overkill, right? You don't necessarily need more than 4. So they did that as a design trait. But that is an interesting difference, right? They put a lot of nails here versus just the 1. So it's a little difference there. This actually says Crockett and Jones, made in England. This actually has the Alfred Sargent logo. So small things there. This has a dovetail heel, where it actually has the dovetail piece in the rubber, and then it's cut out of the leather as it goes on top. And this is just a straight. Okay. Again, that's more of a design issue than necessarily something that I would consider functional, but it is interesting. Also a design issue, if you look at the heel counter on this, this is a peak heel where the Crockett and Jones is rounded. Okay. So just small differences there. Now, when you look at the narrowness, the Crockett and Jones is actually narrower toward the top. That's the last. Okay, where the Alfred Sargent is a little bit wider, and that may actually account for why it's a little bit longer. It may just simply elongate there because the width of the shoes is substantially the same. If we look at them side by side, I could do this with the same shoe, but they're pretty darn close here to being the same width. Okay, so I'm going to say that those are about the same. Now we can actually measure that. If I measure the wide part here, that's 11 centimeters on the Alfred Sargent, and it is also 11 centimeters, maybe 11.5 centimeters on the Crockett and Jones. So a little bit wider on the Crockett and Jones. And again, it's catch-22 as to whether or not that's just the sole or whether that's actually where the foot goes in as well. And remember, they are different sizes, so there's always going to be a little bit of that associated there as well. Now, from a waist perspective, though, that will be something that is more along the lines of the shoe. Crockett and Jones 6.5 centimeters on the waist. Alfred Sargent just about 6, so that is half a centimeter difference. The heel is 7 on the Alfred Sargent, and is also 7 on the Crockett and Jones. So not a huge difference there, but it is worthy of note as you look at them. Okay, so some slight differences there. Now let's look at the stitch density, right, on the top, and that we're going to look at the Alfred Sargent first. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4.5 stitch density on those. Then we look at the Crockett and Jones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4.5. Okay. So pretty much the same from that measure. If we look at stitches underneath, we're at a solid 3 on the Crockett and Jones. On the Alfred Sargent, I'm trying to do this so that I have it in the light. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so and this I can't look at the bottom because there are no stitches there, so I have to do the ones on the top. And of course, the ones on the top on the Crockett and Jones are pretty well hidden underneath some fudging that's on top there. Just looking here to see whether or not I can actually see them, and I can't. So they're very well hidden there. Whereas on the Alfred Sargent, there is no fudging. So that's a difference as well. So if I look at the size of the brogue holes, the large brogue holes anyway, we are looking at 3 millimeters on both of them. So they are the same. And other difference here, looking at the pinking. The pinking is a little bit bigger on the Alfred Sargent than it is on the Crockett and Jones. So, you know, from the measurements that we took and from the look and feel here, I'm going to say that they're substantially equal. From a price perspective, the Alfred Sargent is going to cost £10 less than the Crockett and Jones, so not a significant difference there. I'm going to look at the wrinkles in the vamp because they've both been worn, but not very much. The Alfred Sargent doesn't have as much wear, so I'm going to say that the creasing is about the same as well. So at the end of the day, the only difference that you have from what you can see is the fact that this is a blind stitch sole versus an open channel sole, and you know, that's usually a more expensive trait. For £10 less, I would say it's a better value. Now, I'm going to come back and I'm going to re-look at this after I've had the Alfred Sargent for 6 months, because I have heard from so many people that the Crockett and Jones is a better shoe that I want to take a look at it and see. Now, here's food for thought. They are priced substantially the same price. £10 is nothing when you're looking at 465 pounds for shoes, right? So that is, and not that it's nothing, okay? I don't want to be insensitive about it, but from a comparative standpoint, it's not a huge relevant difference. So I would say that they are priced the same because they are substantially similar, and it comes down to brand preference. Many people are going to choose Crockett and Jones over Alfred Sargent. It's a bigger shoe company. They have more selection. There's a lot other things there. And they are a little bit longer, and you could make a case that says that the design is a little bit nicer. You could make the case on anything. But at the end of the day, I think that they're both really well-made shoes. They're both very good, and it comes down to personal choice and the soles. Now, after I wear them for a while, we'll be able to tell. I can tell you that they're both oak bark tan soles. They're both wear really well, and so it's going to come down to comfort. And we'll have to see it from that perspective. Now, I can tell you that the finishing on the Alfred Sargent is a little bit nicer. There is like a 180-degree finish on the front of the soles, where on Crockett and Jones, it's all the way around. It doesn't really have a look. It doesn't have beveling around the waist. So there's some pieces there that are just not as nice. The Crockett and Jones has a lot of finishing touches on the sole that really aren't applicable because of the finishing that's already inherent, the big finishing that's inherent on the Alfred Sargent. So again, very similar. It's too close to call. I can tell you that just looking at the lasts and the height of the toe caps and all that stuff, all these things that I like, just overall too close to call. I noticed one other thing here on the heel counter. This has an extra layer of stitching on the outside, which is decorative. Again, too close to call, but that is an extra plus for this. So it does have what I would consider to be extra finishing, but it's missing fudging, which is an interesting question. Why did they decide not to do fudging, but they did everything else? Again, I don't know. Maybe they just wanted it to be different enough so shoe collectors like me would want to have both. Don't underestimate the power of making people buy both in an industry where, you know, let's face it, they're shoes, compare one to the other. Why are we going to get both? And look at the color, chestnut versus cherry. Maybe I'm colorblind, but I don't really see a huge difference there. So anyhow, this is Wisconsin Shoe Guy. Thank you for watching. Look forward to your comments. Let me know what you think. Thanks.